David Davis.
Yeah, well, firstly, my apologies for being late. I was voting at the House. And I missed.
I said you were pairing with me.
Well, I voted, I'm afraid, Frank. There we are. I've let you down already. There we are. That's the new politics for you. Trust no one. There we go. There we go.
You've still got the killer instinct, thank God.
I'm afraid so. Yeah. Well, the first thing Frank was talking. I mean, I agree with virtually everything Frank said, but which no doubt will annoy Douglas no end. But the difference between ourselves and the Americans, because they've got a reserve currency, they do not face the cliff edge that we face in terms of finances of the country. And whether it is the inability to sell gilts today or yesterday, the imminent collapse of the currency, we are in a circumstance where we simply can't borrow the money to do what the government wants to do. It's really very straightforward, and that means taxes are going to go up. Spending is going to go down much more sharply than anybody is predicting now. That will have all sorts of consequences, some of them in terms of public services delivery or the denial of public service delivery, but some of it rather more old-fashioned. The industrial relations in the public services will turn terrible in the next 5 years. We have not for 15 years really had a wage squeeze. And that's now going to come, so that's going to be incredibly difficult. I mean, it actually, when you talk about it, has sort of overtones of the 70s about it, not so much the 30s as the 70s. In terms of the effect on society as a whole, we're going to see a decline in tolerance. Issues such as immigration have become much, much more sensitive, much, much more difficult to manage. We have, and forgive me, Frank, but we have, in the government's approach to this, all rhetoric, no action on something like immigration. So we're actually setting up the worst possible consequence. You've got open borders and yet this incredibly tough rhetoric. And I'm afraid that will actually feed the intolerance. And I could say the same about housing and a whole series of other areas. We're going to see a sizable increase in governmental authoritarianism. And with it, a cavalier attitude to the rule of law. I don't have 5 seconds of my time for Fred Goodwin, but I do not approve of the ex-Solicitor General in the form of Harriet Harman saying we are now going to move a law in order to suspend one contract. Incidentally, you can't do it. The courts will throw it out. I mean, I don't know if you remember the law which was moved to suppress the noisy chap outside Parliament. I've forgotten his name. Well, when they tried to actually execute that law against him, the judge quite rightly said you cannot pass a law against one individual, and threw it out. Ironically, they used the same law to arrest people. Well, that hopefully was not legal, but the simple truth is they can't do that. But my concern is that when governments reach to lynch mob rhetoric, to the breach of the rule of law, explicit trying to break the rule of law, then we have serious problems in the country. Now that's just inside our country. I mean, the other problems we have to face is these tensions, of course, are going to apply across the world. And every country is going to try, subtly or less than subtly, to minimize the discomfort of its own population. Now, in some cases, that's going to be pretty tough-minded behavior. It'd be interesting to see what happens if we had this meeting in a year's time, what would be happening with respect to Russia and China. That would be a very interesting thing, because each of them will try and use the leverage they have, but also on a much more subtle level. I mean, we keep talking about no protectionism, but look what's happening in banking. Every government in the world is encouraging its banks to support its businesses. And so you're seeing a dissolving of effectively international credit movement. So there's a whole series of problems of that nature. The other thing that's going to come is that when we do come out the other side of this, we're going to have 2 sets of problems to worry about. Number one is that everything that's being done from this pseudo-Keynesian, and I choose my words carefully, this pseudo-Keynesian approach to this, we are going to have huge economic burdens in the form of debts. We're also going to have, as soon as the economy starts up again, because of the so-called quantitative easing, the new virtual printing of money, we're going to see inflation take off again, which is going to exacerbate some of those problems like industrial relations in the public sector that we were talking about before. So it's a pretty grim prospect, whoever is in charge. I just came in at the end of Douglas's comments. I won't pick a fight with him, but I did actually criticise the Moussaoui decision, and I did actually criticise the Geert Wilders decision myself at the time. But the simple truth is that an incoming Conservative government, because that's probably what it's going to be, will at least have some degree of mandate. Sorry?
By a landslide.
Well, I'm trying not to be discourteous. We don't know. I mean, bear in mind, the simple sort of mechanics of this is we've got to have a 7-point lead to win at all. That's the other for the thing not to forget, Frank. Sorry, should finish. So they will have at least one thing, and that is, I think, by the time we get to a year and a quarter's time, the public at large will realise we're in a really, really deep hole and may be willing to tolerate some of the actions that need to be taken.
Great. Thank you.